In a landmark decision that will be studied for generations, the Supreme Court has struck down the Trump administration's use of national emergency powers to impose sweeping tariffs on foreign goods, declaring it an overreach of executive authority and a violation of the constitutional separation of powers. The ruling marks a dramatic end to years of aggressive trade policy, forcing a national reckoning on the limits of presidential power in economic affairs and sparking debate across the political spectrum. The case, American Alliance for Fair Trade versus United States, challenged the administration's claim that trade imbalances and deficits were a national security threat, arguing that such powers should not be used for economic policy. The court's decision signals that while presidents have significant authority, it is not without boundaries, especially in international trade, where the stakes affect millions of jobs and global relationships. This ruling closes a turbulent chapter of trade wars, supply chain disruptions, and rising consumer prices that have impacted American households and businesses alike. The legal battle, fueled by stories of struggling farmers, factory workers, and families facing higher costs, brought national attention to the real-world consequences of trade policy decisions. Now, the outcome has redefined the balance of power between Congress and the president, reaffirming the role of legislative oversight in shaping the nation's economic future. The implications of this decision will shape future presidencies, influence how America negotiates with its global partners, and determine the country's role in the world economy for years to come. The nation now stands at a crossroads, with its trade policy and the very nature of executive power fundamentally changed, setting a precedent for generations ahead. President Trump's America First agenda made tariffs a central tool of his economic policy, targeting steel, aluminum, and a wide range of imports under the guise of national security. This marked a dramatic shift from previous administrations, signaling a new era of aggressive trade tactics. Using Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act and later the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the administration imposed tariffs on both traditional allies and global rivals alike. These measures were justified as necessary to protect American industries and jobs, but they also sparked intense debate at home and abroad. Critics argued these moves stretched the definition of emergency and were more about protectionism than genuine security concerns. Many experts warned that such actions could backfire, harming the very workers and industries they aimed to protect. The result was a global trade war, with retaliatory tariffs from other countries and growing economic uncertainty for American businesses and families. Supply chains were disrupted, and some companies struggled to adapt to the new landscape. Some industries, like domestic steel, saw short-term gains, but many more, especially farmers and manufacturers, suffered from lost export markets and higher costs for materials. The ripple effects were felt across rural communities and industrial towns. For everyday consumers, tariffs meant higher prices on a wide range of goods, from groceries to electronics, squeezing household budgets and fueling frustration. The debate raged on. Were tariffs a necessary defense of American interests, or a self-inflicted wound that hurt more than it helped? The nation remained deeply divided on the issue. This controversy set the stage for a high-stakes legal showdown that would ultimately reach the Supreme Court, raising questions about the limits of presidential power. The outcome of this battle would determine not just the future of tariffs, but the very scope of presidential authority over American trade policy for years to come. For most of U.S. history, Congress controlled trade policy, but political gridlock led to slow, inconsistent action. In the 20th century, Congress delegated more authority to the president, hoping for quicker, expert-driven decisions. Laws like the Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act and Emergency Powers Statutes gave presidents new tools to respond to global threats. These powers were meant for genuine crises, rarely used and tightly focused. The Trump administration broke with tradition, using emergency powers broadly to reshape trade policy. This shift raised a constitutional question. How much power can Congress delegate before it abandons its own responsibilities? The administration's expansive interpretation of national security transformed the president from negotiator to architect of tariff policy. Legal scholars and lawmakers warned this could undermine the constitutional balance. The Supreme Court was called upon to decide where the line should be drawn. The legal challenge united importers, manufacturers, and farmers who argued the president had overstepped, using emergency laws for routine economic policy. They claimed these statutes were for real, time-sensitive crises, not long-standing trade disputes. The government countered that broad presidential discretion was necessary for national security. The courts had to decide should they defer to the president's judgment or intervene when executive action strays into domestic economic regulation. The case became a classic test of separation of powers. The Supreme Court was tasked with clarifying the limits of emergency authority in trade. The stakes, the future of executive power, and the role of Congress in economic policy. The Supreme Court's 6-3 decision, authored by Chief Justice Roberts, declared that emergency powers cannot be used as a blank check for broad economic policy. The court ruled that the administration's sweeping tariffs exceeded the authority granted by Congress. The majority opinion emphasized that emergency statutes are a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, meant for specific threats, not to overhaul the global economy. The ruling narrows the use of emergency powers, requiring a clear, direct link to national security. Future presidents will face a much higher bar for imposing tariffs without congressional approval. The dissent warned the court was overstepping, but the majority insisted Congress, not the president, holds the primary power over trade. The decision returns significant authority to Congress and reshapes the balance of power in Washington. The legal foundation of the Trump tariffs is gone, and the rules for future trade policy are rewritten. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves through Washington. The White House condemned the ruling as a betrayal of American workers, vowing to explore limited legal options. On Capitol Hill, Democrats celebrated a check on executive overreach, while some Republicans expressed frustration and others relief at a return to congressional control. The president can no longer unilaterally impose tariffs. Future trade actions will require explicit congressional approval. The political landscape has shifted overnight, forcing the administration to rethink its strategy. Congress now faces the challenge of crafting a new trade framework amid deep divisions and powerful interest groups. The decision creates a power vacuum, with the future of U.S. trade policy up for grabs. Will Congress restore broad presidential authority or impose stricter limits? The answer will shape the American economy and its global relationships for years to come. The debate over trade and power has only just begun. The economic impact was immediate, sending shockwaves from the heart of Wall Street all the way to small businesses across the country. Wall Street surged as tariffs were lifted, with investors reacting swiftly to the news and driving markets higher. The move boosted manufacturing, retail, and tech stocks, as companies anticipated stronger profits and renewed growth. Businesses that rely on imports welcomed lower costs and greater stability, allowing them to plan ahead and expand their offerings. Meanwhile, protected industries like steel braced for renewed competition from abroad, facing uncertainty about their future. For consumers, the end of tariffs promises lower prices on everyday goods, from groceries to electronics, making household budgets stretch further. Shoppers will see relief from hidden taxes at the register, with savings adding up over time. Some jobs in protected sectors may be at risk, as companies adjust to increased competition and changing market dynamics. But most families will benefit from reduced costs, enjoying greater purchasing power and more choices. The ruling could slow the trend of reshoring manufacturing as companies weigh the benefits of global production. Many firms are now reconsidering their global supply chains, seeking efficiency and resilience in a shifting landscape. Underlying trade disputes remain unresolved, with tensions simmering between major economies and new challenges emerging. New strategies will be needed to address issues like intellectual property theft and unfair trade practices, which continue to threaten innovation. The transition will create winners and losers, as some industries thrive while others struggle to adapt. But the overall effect is a more predictable, open trade environment, offering new opportunities for growth and collaboration. The economic shockwave is just beginning, with ripple effects expected to shape markets for years to come. The path forward is uncertain as policymakers and businesses navigate this new era of global commerce. America's approach to global commerce is being rewritten in real time, with every decision shaping the future of trade. To unpack the ruling's significance, we spoke with Dr. Elena Vance, a leading expert in constitutional and trade law. Dr. Vance called the decision the most consequential intervention in U.S. trade policy in nearly a century. She explained that the court's message is clear. Emergency powers are not a loophole for ordinary policymaking. The president is commander-in-chief, not economist-in-chief. Congress holds the power to regulate trade. Future presidents will need congressional coalitions or traditional diplomacy to address trade disputes. The process will be slower, but more transparent and stable. Dr. Vance warned that the decision puts pressure on a divided Congress to act, risking gridlock and uncertainty. The challenge: craft a modern trade policy that protects American interests and upholds free trade principles. The court has set the rules. Now it's up to lawmakers to play the game. The future of U.S. trade is in Congress's hands. The Supreme Court's decision closes the era of presidentially driven tariff wars and reasserts the constitutional balance of power. Congress now holds the reins on trade, but the path forward is uncertain and politically fraught. Industries and workers must adapt again, and the fundamental questions about America's role in global trade remain. The ruling is a testament to the resilience of American institutions and the enduring power of checks and balances. The responsibility now shifts to Congress and the public to shape the next chapter. Will the U.S. embrace free trade, protectionism, or something new? The debate is just beginning, and every American has a stake in the outcome. The future of American trade policy is an open question. What should it look like?